Yeah. Okay. Sydney, what's the latest? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it. Jalissa, I'm glad to see you today. I missed you yesterday.
I know, I couldn't make
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get to see you tomorrow, maybe. No, you're in the Monday Tuesday group. Excuse me. We'll get to see you next week on Monday Tuesday.
for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay. Well, I got you guys here. Don't forget about your hey, Talon, how are you? Don't forget about your Zoom session with Mrs. Ferranti. So some of you guys will have it on Monday with her, and some of you guys will have it on Friday. So just FYI, remember what time you're assigned to be with her. I don't want you to miss out on that. All right, what's going on today, Talon? You all right? There's Selena. Good morning.
Oh.
Actually, no, we're missing more than that because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we're missing 5. So we still have a few. Maybe they'll be able to get on here in a little bit. So well, what's going on in the world? Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
good. Everybody's making it. Talent, you work last night? Did it keep you out late? All right. So are you at school today? I see you wearing your mask. I bet you must be at school. So, all right. Well, I'm kind of barricaded here in my office, so I'm not wearing my mask. So anyway, all right. So, well, are things talented? Things seem different at school this year than before with the mask and stuff. It's okay. All right. You guys hang in there, and it's gonna be all right. So, well, today we're gonna start talking about food safety. So let's see here. There we go. There, now I can still see your faces. All right, so we're gonna talk about food safety. So why do you think it'd be important for us to have a discussion about food safety, Sydney? Hmm. Sydney, why do you think it would be important for us to have a discussion about food safety? You're muted, sweetheart. There we go. Yeah. So tell me about your theory on why we need to know about food safety.
So that way we could be safe and not have people getting food poisoned or nothing.
That's right. Exactly right, girl. So anybody ever been out to eat and got sick from some food that they ate when they went out to eat? That ever happened to anybody?
No.
No.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, isn't it? So it happens. So that's one of the reasons why we want to be careful with our food handling procedures and what we're doing, you know, with us as food employees if we're sick, and how we're handling food, because all that makes a big difference on our end result of our food. So, okay, well, let's take a little true, false. Let's take a little mini quiz before we get started. You want to? Let's test your food safety knowledge here for just a minute. So, tell me, is this true or false? Common foods such as beef and chicken and fish can cause foodborne illnesses. Is that true or false?
I feel like it's true.
Yeah, Jalissa, you're exactly right. So most foods that contain protein, which meat definitely does, right, can easily become contaminated or grow bacteria problems. Okay, because bacteria, just like us, they like to eat good, and so those things that are high quality food like that are definitely going to grow some problems. Okay, here's another one. So even healthy people can cause illnesses by carrying microorganisms to food. Is that true or false? Can healthy people make people sick?
True.
What do you think? Hi, Cindy.
I finally got on.
I'm glad to see you. So we're taking a little mini quiz here. We're asking, do you think healthy people can make people sick?
Yes.
Yes, they can. Yeah, that's kind of you know, things that get on your hands, for instance, and they transfer food problems or bacteria from place to place just on your hands, right? So, and some people are what we call carriers of disease. And so, for instance, with our coronavirus, some people are what we call asymptomatic, meaning they don't have any symptoms, but they're still carrying the virus. And so, and they're able to make other people sick, even though they're not sick themselves. So that's kind of weird, isn't it? So, but those are all those why we're so concerned about food handling and food safety. Okay. All right. So if you're going to wash your hands, proper hand washing includes scrubbing hands and arms for 15 seconds. Is that true or false?
False.
True.
Okay. Well, actually, the CDC Health Department says 15 seconds is long enough. So if you're washing your hands in hot soapy water for 15 seconds, you're good to go. So sometimes places like, I think Sonic has the 20-20 rule, and you're supposed to wash your hands for 20 seconds every 20 minutes. Anybody a Sonic person? You guys remember that? So, okay. Well, anyway, that's called the 20-20 rule. And you know, 20 minutes when you're busy working, man, that goes by fast. And so if you think about it, how many times, if you're out there working, how many times during your shift have you been washing your hands? Make a conscious note to think about that. I think some of us might be a little afraid if we were thinking about that or counting the number of times. Okay, so all right, so here's another trivia question for you. The word clean and the word sanitized, are those the same thing? What's the difference between clean and sanitized? Anybody? Megan? Oh, was somebody going to answer? Megan, what's the difference between clean and sanitized? What do you think, Megan? No? Okay. Let's see. Here comes Jesus. Okay. Let's see. Selena, what's the difference between clean and sanitized? Putting you on the spot, huh? Oh, let's see here. I can't hear you, sweetheart. I don't think your speaker's on. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, Selena, I didn't hear what you said, but I hope it was some version of that clean just means free of visible soil, and sanitized is that we've reduced the amount of bacteria down to a tolerable level. Is that what you said? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, good work, girl. All right, so clean is it looks good, but sanitized means that we've done something with either chemical or heat to make it where it's not going to make somebody sick. Okay. All right. So here's another one. So is anybody already thinking about fall and all of the yummy food that comes along with fall cooking, like pumpkin pie and turkey and all that good stuff? You guys been thinking about that yet? I'm always thinking about pie. So so here's a turkey question for you. So when you're thawing your Thanksgiving turkey, can you thaw it out in the kitchen sink? Where should you thaw it at, guys?
Refrigerator.
Refrigerator. Who said that? Was that you, Talon? No, who said refrigerator? Oh, Cindy. Woohoo. All right. Yes, refrigerator is exactly right. So the best place to thaw things is definitely the refrigerator. So 41 or below, actually. Your refrigerator should be 41 degrees or below. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Here's another question. Anybody a server that serves food in a restaurant? I think, Jalissa, do you work as a server, sweetheart, in your restaurant? Yeah. So whenever you deliver like drinks to the table, do you hold them by the top or do you hold them by the side or the bottom?
Never hold them by the top because that's where their mouth goes sometimes. So you have to hold them by the side or the bottom.
Good girl. Okay. Yep, right. Even if your hands are clean, they can still have bacteria on them, right? And so you want to hold them where the customer's not going to hold them, and you definitely don't want to hold them by the top or have your fingers in there when you're bringing it out, right? So that's good, Jalissa. All right. So washing dishes in detergent also sanitizes them. What do you think?
No.
Did I hear a no? Well, if you said no, you're right. So, right. So in a commercial kitchen, there's a couple of different ways we can sanitize dishes. One is with heat and one is with chemical. So in a restaurant, you're going to have to do it one or the other of those two ways. In a 3-compartment sink, if your restaurant doesn't have a dishwasher, your 3-compartment sink is going to be set up wash, rinse, and sanitize. And in that sanitized solution, a lot of times it'll be like bleach, for instance. It might be quaternary ammonia, and it could also be something called iodine. So, and those are the 3 approved chemicals that we can sanitize dishes in. Okay. The other way we can sanitize dishes is in a dish machine, and that dish machine gets above 180 degrees on its final on the plants, and that way it's killing bacteria. You know, things are pretty much dead at 165. So that's why 180. So that's so no, just washing them in detergent or Dawn dish liquid doesn't sanitize them. Okay, so how about do you know the word pathogens? You know the word pathogens? Pathogens, and you can kind of remember pathogens and poisons, or pathogens are kind of like a bacteria. Okay, and things like water and ice can be contaminated, and so we have to be careful with that. Things like ice on a salad bar, for instance, we wouldn't want to reuse that for anything like for putting in drinks or something like that. We always just need to dispose of things like that. So, well, that's some pretty good trivia taken there, folks. You guys did a good job on that. I think you guys about made 100. I kind of like that. So, well, this is our intro to food safety here. And so this next couple of class sessions that we're going to be having here, we'll be talking about food safety and the ways to keep our customers safe and ourselves safe. So, you know, lots and lots of people eat out every day. And, you know, what's considered eating out is just food that you didn't eat at home. So even if you're eating at school, that's considered eating out. And so, you know, with the coronavirus, I think less people are eating out than usual, but there's still a great number of people that eat food away from home. And so it's a really a big deal how we're handling food and how we're taking care of our customers. Okay, so the restaurant industry itself is a huge employer of people. They employ, you know, like 8 to 10% of people that are working. When you think about all the jobs that are out there, that restaurant hospitality section is a huge number of people that are working in that particular area. Okay, so people that are let's see here. People spend a ton of money every year eating out. Most people, every person spends almost $3,000 a year eating out. That's each person. So that's a lot of eating out. That's expensive. And so we have a lot of opportunity for us to get sick if we're not eating at places that are not doing a good job. All right.
Late.
Hey, Jacob, how are you?
Sleepy.
All right. Well, we'll try to keep you awake here. All right. So, all right. So I asked you before, had anybody ever gotten sick from eating out before? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Yeah, that is no good. Well, okay, so people dine out for a bunch of different reasons. One, maybe it's a special occasion. Maybe, I don't know, you haven't been to the grocery store in a while and you're hungry, or maybe it's a convenience thing because you've got something you got to do here in a little bit and you didn't have really time to cook. So there's a bunch of reasons why they eat out. So do you think whenever you go eat out, do you think you should have to worry that you're going to get sick? Is that a worry?
No, shouldn't.
It shouldn't be a worry. I know. Like right now, it is kind of on everybody's mind, isn't it? And so it's hard whenever you have that worry. How would you feel if you as a food employee got somebody sick? How would you feel about that? Would that make you feel bad? Yeah, it would make me feel bad too. So most people, you know, stuff like that happens all the time, but it's not because people mean to do it. It's either because they don't know about food safety or they were careless. Okay, and so it happens. And so that's why food safety training is really important, and so people know what to do. Okay. So how often, remember from our quiz just a minute ago, how often do you think you should wash your hands? Every 30 minutes? What do you think, Jacob?
3 times a day.
3 times a day? All right. All right, 3 times in like a work shift. All right. So anybody else have something they wanna guess? Okay, so we just talked about this a minute ago. Every 20 minutes, we want to wash our hands, don't we? So that seems like a lot. So if it's 2020, and that's the thing. Anytime you have on gloves, which if we're handling food, we're wearing gloves. So anytime you take those gloves off, which should be about every 20 minutes, you're washing your hands. Gloves are kind of one of those things that people wear them, but they're only as clean as everything you've touched with them. And so it's kind of a false sense of security, because I would almost rather have clean hands than gloves that have been all over the place. So clean hands are a cook's best friend. So, but whenever you're changing gloves, you're supposed to be washing your hands in between putting on clean gloves. Okay. So, well, let's talk about this. When do you think you should stay home from work? At what point, if you got the sniffles or whatever, you think, should you stay home then? At what point does it need to be where you need to stay home?
Fever, cough.
You have a cough?
Fever.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So things like throwing up, fever, and the dreaded diarrhea. Those are all symptoms of being sick, okay? And so any version of that is probably need to stay home. So a big indicator really, fever, and when you get a fever, you really start to not feel very good too. So so that's something that you want to watch, okay? So, but all food operations have that same safety concern, from the smallest of mom and pop restaurants to the grandest of hotels and restaurants. They all have, food safety is an issue for everybody. So it's not just, a singled out in a particular kind of restaurant. It applies to all restaurants. And so there's lots of things that can happen with foodborne illnesses, and some of them are real mild, where maybe you just get a stomach ache or something like that. And some of them are deadly, where things like E. coli and things like that. The right combination of those, you can actually die from that. And so we don't want to mess around with that. Okay. All right. So here's some problems from contaminated food. Look at all this. So it's very expensive thing that we are trying to avoid. So some things that we do to kind of help our operations is that we're buying food from reputable sources. We're training our employees to handle food safely. Restaurants, they work really hard to have a good reputation for people to say, oh, let's go eat at this place. But, if you get sick there, or if it comes out on the news that a bunch of people have gotten sick because they ate at a certain place, that's really going to be detrimental or harmful to their business, isn't it? And so it could cause a great loss of money, or it could really damage the business where it may not ever be able to recover. So it's really important that food employees know what they're doing. Okay. So here's something that we might want to talk about here. A foodborne illness. And so the definition of a foodborne illness is a disease transmitted to people by food. So it's something that a person has eaten. And it could have everything to do with the food, or it could have something to do with the food handler that's introduced it to the food. But whatever the case, the person that has ingested the food has become sick from the food. Okay, so that's a foodborne. Is there any questions about that? Okay, all right. So which leads us to this next slide. What is a foodborne illness outbreak? And this is where places like the health department get involved. So, you know, if you get, let's say, salmonella, if you feel bad enough, you may go to the doctor or to the emergency room, right? And a lot of times the doctors, if they don't know what's going on with you, they'll do some tests and try to figure out what's happened. And so when those test results come back and you have something like E. coli or salmonella or Shigella, some of those reportable diseases, they're going to start asking some questions like, well, where did you eat? What did you eat? Okay. And then if they get more people coming into the ER with those same symptoms, they're going to say, where did you eat? What did you eat? And pretty soon there's a pattern that develops. And, you know, if we have 2 or more people that have eaten at the same place and they've had the same food and they're both sick, what would be your conclusion? What would you think was going on? Mercedes, what do you think's going on there?
They would think there's I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
You what, sweetheart?
They would have like a outbreak or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So if you think that if there's 2 or more people that have eaten the same food from the same, you know, the same food, then we're going to say that probably there's a problem. Sometimes you'll see like recalls on things like sausage, or you'll see a recall from a meat producer or a meat packing company, and it may be, you know, large areas of the state that there may be a problem with wherever that particular supplier shipped that food from. So, and it may also be concentrated in just one restaurant too. So it could be a lot of different things, but we know that if we have 2 or more people that are sick from the same food, then we have an outbreak on our hands, and that's not good. Okay, so here's some costs of a foodborne illness outbreak. So this is, you know, if you own a restaurant or a processing company of some kind, you know, customers are not going to forget that. Who was it? Chipotle a while back, where they were having so much trouble with their burrito filling for their I guess it was their bowls, wasn't it? For their rice bowls. Anyway, so I mean, I think it really kind of hurt their business because they were unable to, I mean, they couldn't get it right. And it was like 2 different times that they had made some people sick. And so it really hurt their business because people weren't just actually, you know, beating their door down trying to get in there to buy food. So that is bad news. So loss of customer and sales. The other thing is this loss of reputation. Because, you know, if you think, you know, that is bad, and so I'm not going to go eat there because I'm a little worried about their food. Okay. So you get sued too. You know, if you make somebody sick, they probably are going to be mad about it. And so you may have some court costs in there. Some other things that might happen are insurance premiums, depends on what has happened, but there could be some really some serious ramifications of what's happened. Okay. Another thing, if you work at a place like that, how are your employees going to feel? So, remember we were talking about earlier, how would you feel if you knew that you made somebody sick? Feel kind of bad about that, right? And so it may be that that you don't feel like your business is as clean as they should be, or doing things to care for their customers like they should, and so it really makes you feel bad about working there. So, and if you feel bad about your job and working there, you may not want to go to work, which means you might call in more often or not go to work. And so absenteeism is a problem. See back there. So at the very least, we have a need for retraining employees and for teaching food safety and giving them some good information so they know how to keep food safe. And then the last thing, just embarrassment that because that'll probably be in the news or many people will be talking about it. And so there's a lot of things that can happen with a foodborne illness outbreak. Okay, here's some people that we're really concerned about. And this is really, something that we have to be really careful with whenever you're cooking for places like a nursing home or at a hospital or at daycares, for instance, things like that. People in these particular categories are really susceptible to different food problems. So preschool age children, they just haven't been alive long enough for their immune systems to develop enough to be able to fight off some serious infections. Pregnant women, a lot of times, whenever we tell them not to eat things like lunch meat or cheese that hasn't been aged. And that's a bacteria thing that could affect her baby. And so there's some things that we're concerned about that. Elderly folks oftentimes have a strained immune system or one that's already fighting off some other problems that they may have, like diabetes or whatever else they may be suffering with. And so their immune system is already maxed out. And so to get a foodborne illness on top of that would just wipe them out. And so that's why, things like right now, like with the coronavirus, so many of our elderly folks already have respiratory or heart issues or other things going on. And so something like this is just more than their immune system is able to handle. And things like medication, if you take medication on a regular basis, sometimes it makes you more susceptible to different types of illness. And so you have to be really careful whenever you're working with people in these categories, especially. So we want to be careful anyway, but things like, for instance, working in a nursing home, a lot of the food that's prepared is specifically handled and some food is completely avoided. Like, for instance, like meringue on pies, instead of using shell eggs because it's not really cooked, they would use processed egg whites to make the meringue for pies because we don't want to take the chance of salmonella. And so there are a lot of foodborne illnesses out there that are pretty wicked. Things like E. coli, for instance. So it's been about 3 years ago, but my son got E. coli, and we had been not really sure where it came from, but he was in the hospital for 2 weeks in an ICU unit and had plasma and transfusions and just nearly died. And so the people just don't think about food as being something that could be really, really serious. But that was a big big reality check for me, seeing him go through that and just knowing that it was food related. And so you have to really be on top of that if you're gonna work in food. Okay, so moving on here, some things that can happen to food. There's 3 different categories. There's biological hazards, and those are things like viruses and parasites and fungus and things like that that get into food. It can also be things like mushrooms. Like, anybody out here ever go hunt for morel mushrooms? You ever do that? So, but you can get a hold of some mushrooms that are bad news if you don't know what you're doing, and so that would be a biological hazard. There are some different kinds of fish that will get into different types of algae, and it will make the fish toxic to people. And so we'll talk about that a little later. Another potential hazard to food would be chemical hazards. Chemicals that get in the food, things like pesticides, for instance. If you're having your restaurant sprayed, which you have to do on a regular basis, but if you're not careful and don't keep the food put up, you don't want to introduce that. Sometimes you'll have things. There's kind of that controversy of organic food and then food that's been chemically altered in some way or sprayed. And so people are concerned about chemicals getting into their food. So that's another way that that can happen. I tell you, the other thing about chemical hazards are things that happen in the kitchen. One time, I was friends with a health inspector, and so I thought, man, it'd be so fun to kind of go on a little ride around inspection with my friend. And so we went into this restaurant, and in the back they had this huge pot of chili, and they had it in an ice bath in the sink, and which was fine, but above where the chili was a big can of Comet. And this gal was over here stirring the chili, trying to get it cooled down. Well, then the Comet falls into the chili. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh dear. And so she picks it up, puts it up there, and continues stirring the chili. And we're like, no. So that would be an example of a chemical hazard and what not to do. So don't do that. And the other thing is physical hazards. And so things like Band-Aids. Now, wouldn't that be gross? Find that in your food. Things like jewelry. Happens all the time. So people will have their little bangly bracelet on, and one of the charms, they look down and it's missing. Well, guess where that's at? It's in the mashed potatoes. So fingernails, like false fingernails. So we don't wear those in the kitchen. Okay. And then there's also some things that might be part of the food. So think about like a chicken bone, for instance, turning up in chicken salad. So, I mean, that's still a physical hazard, but it is part of the product, but we definitely don't want to eat that, right? Or trying to think of some, like a pit, like a cherry pit, like in a cherry pie or something. So that could be something that could turn up as well. So let's see what else we got here. So chemical contamination, that's what we were talking about. Oh, metal leaching. This is interesting. So sometimes you'll find bowls that are for decorative purpose, like it'll say not for food or something. Like, have you ever seen that before? Sometimes you'll see, well, it's because they they're a metal that's not coated, that will leach into the food, or sometimes the glaze on that will have oh gosh, well, anyway, it'll be lead, will be lead. And so, and that stuff will leach into the food. Even things like storing orange juice, for instance, in a metal container, that acid from the orange juice and that metal will cause a chemical reaction and be not good. So those are some things you kind of got to be on the lookout for. Physical, again, there's those physical contamination things. We want to avoid. Anybody ever got a hair in their food? That's kind of gross. But here's a little bit of hope though. I cannot think of any foodborne illness that came from having a hair in your food, other than it's just really gross. But anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know, but anyway, ew. So here's some of these biological contaminants. So viruses, and that's what we're really concerned about right now, right? And then bacteria, parasites, and fungi. And we're going to talk about these a little bit more. Okay, there's our biological toxins. Okay, so viruses, they don't multiply in food. And so that's one of the things, like with coronavirus, for instance, we're not really that concerned about the food because that's not where the problem's coming from. Okay, but viruses need a live host, and you have to ingest them for them to grow. Okay, so viruses come from people, and they're transmitted from people to surface or from people to people. So you're either breathing out or coughing on someone, or speaking and your spit's getting on somebody and they're inhaling it, or it's on their hands and it's a surface they've touched, and then you picked it up and then you've ingested that in some way, either through your hamburger if you had it on your hands. But usually we can control that by washing our hands. So a lot of problems that we see are that food service employees haven't washed their hands really good after they've gone to the bathroom. And so that's how we control this is mainly is just hand washing. Okay, so that's viruses. Viruses are really, really small. They're like 100 times smaller than bacteria. Okay, and it only takes just a few viruses to make you sick. Okay, anyway, that minimizing bare hand contact is how we control that. Having clean hands, using things like tissues, or using things like tongs to handle food instead of bare hands is lots better. Okay, but really poor personal hygiene is to blame for viruses. Okay, bacteria. The deal with bacteria is it can double every 20 minutes. Okay, and some bacteria, it's the bacteria in the food, and some bacteria, it's the toxins that they create by living and dying that make people sick. So it depends on what it is. But some bacteria will not be destroyed when you cook it. A lot of our bacteria, we're trying to get the food hot, but we know that there's a few spore forming bacteria that actually have like a little, that actually go dormant and will protect themselves, but whenever the food gets out and kind of gets room temperature again, it comes back to life and starts reproducing again. So you have to be really, really careful with that. So, but they double exponentially. Do you guys know that word exponentially? Yeah, whoopsie, back over here. They double exponentially. So that means that 2 become 4, and 4 become 8, and 8 becomes 16. And so pretty soon, I mean, you can see how quickly we would have a ton of bacteria. So we can only see bacteria with the microscope, but they're much bigger, again, than viruses. So some bacteria is healthful. Things like, that's how we make yogurt, for instance. You guys like yogurt? Yeah, so it takes, bacteria culture is introduced into the dairy product, and that's how that little bit of fermentation process, that's how that bacteria happens. And some of that is really good for your gut, like for your digestive system. But too much of that, or the wrong kind, is not good. Okay, so in just everyday life, you have about 600 bacteria that live on your skin. And so, and we need some bacteria. It's just the problem is that if we get too much or the wrong kind, then that's bad news. Okay, so the spore-forming bacteria that we were talking about, there's one called Clostridium perfringens. Now that's a weird word, isn't it? Clostridium perfringens. And there's one called Bacillus cereus. And then there's one called botulism. And if you guys are home canners, if you've ever been around anybody that cans food, you might have heard of botulism before. So Clostridium perfringens is known as the buffet germ, like a food buffet. And so food that is not kept at a proper temperature that's been out on the buffet will grow bacteria. And so our hot hold out there, like whenever you have a hot bar, that has to be 135 or warmer to keep our food keep food safely. Okay. Then Bacillus cereus, we see that turn up in rice a lot because people think, oh, rice, what can happen, right? And so, well, it's hot food, and rice stays pretty warm on the inside whenever it's just kind of sitting around, and so it starts to grow some bacteria. And another thing, baked potatoes are really notorious for this. So at the end of the evening, people restaurants will keep baked potatoes that have been wrapped in foil, and maybe make things like twice baked potatoes, or make baked potato soup or something like that out of them, just to keep from throwing them away. Well, in between that, the peel of the potato and the foil, there gets to be a really big bacteria problem, and so that's not good. So and then botulism, that's why we whenever you work in a restaurant, you can't sell home canned products in your restaurant. So there are some variances that you can get for things like jelly and for things like salsa that some restaurants have, and they are preparing those things in an approved kitchen that's been inspected, and the recipe has been checked for the particular amount of acidity that it needs to deter this. But things like farmers markets and stuff like that, there are a few variances, but that's why we aren't able to sell those things or use them in a restaurant for home canned goods because of the botulism, because that's one of those wicked bacteria that can kill you. Okay, so let's see. It says on here, it takes less than 10 E. coli bacteria to make you sick. So that's not very much of that at all. Okay, here's an acronym though. So these are the things that microorganisms need to grow. And so just like us, they need food, and the food they like best is high protein food. Okay, so things like meat and things like cheese and things like that. They like a fairly low acid. And so if you look at a lot of canned goods, for instance, you'll see things like citric acid are added to it if you look at the ingredient label, and that's to slow down that growth of microorganisms. So also temperature. And so whenever you think about you go to the grocery store and you buy a gallon of milk, do you leave that set out on the counter? No. So it has to be in the refrigerator at a certain temperature, right? And so temperature is another one of those things that we can control to help our food last longer. So things like salad bars, for instance. If you have food that's out on a salad bar, the salad bars are all refrigerated, aren't they? Because a lot of times those salad dressings are dairy based, or maybe we have things like tuna salad or something like that out there that need refrigeration to stay healthy. The other thing is the amount of time. The longer something hangs around, the more time bacteria has to grow. And so we have a 4-hour window for food to be out of temperature. So you have to control food that's for sale to the public in either by temperature or by time. So if you had a salad bar, for instance, or a hot bar, and you just had food set out and you weren't controlling the temperature in any way, if it was allowed to be at room temperature, 4 hours would be the max, and then you'd have to throw it away because it would have grown too much bacteria. Okay, so a lot of restaurants will control the temperature of their salad bars and their hot bars. That way they can keep the food out there longer. Plus things, I like my hot food hot and my cold food cold, so it makes things taste better also. So then there's the oxygen. So if you think about like food that you buy in a can, for instance, what are you depriving the thing that's in the can of? Anybody? Oxygen. That's right. So we're keeping oxygen away from that so that microorganism is not growing in there. And the other thing is moisture. So things like, how come, I don't know, beef jerky, why is that shelf stable? Anybody like beef jerky? Mm-hmm. So
Yes.
Yeah, who said that? Jacob, was that you?
Huh?
Hey sis, was that you?
That was Jacob.
Jacob, okay. Yeah, that likes beef jerky. So yeah, because it's dry. And so, and things like, for instance, bacon. You guys like bacon?
Yes.
Yeah. So bacon, if bacon is cooked until crisp, it can actually set out. And so there's lots of hamburger places and lots of other places that use bacon on or with some of their products. And they'll actually cook bacon crisp, and it can actually sit out because there's not a lot of moisture in that, and so it's shelf stable. Okay. All right. So here's what we call TCS foods, and that's time and temperature controlled for safety. Time and temperature controlled for safety. Okay. And TCS foods. So with TCS foods, they've made this most wanted list, I call it, because they have a history of being called with illnesses. Okay, and what that means is, whenever we've had somebody with the health department, they have had issues with this, and so things like dairy products, for instance, meat, fish, potatoes, eggs. This is tofu. You guys know what tofu is? It's like a soybean product. Rice, shellfish, poultry. Down here you've got things like oil and garlic mixture. Because what will happen is they will actually grow bacteria mix. So we don't want that. Let's see here. I need to mute somebody here. All right, got a little feedback. So melons, when you buy a watermelon, you can buy whole watermelons, but you can't buy sliced watermelons. Well, I mean, you can buy sliced, but they have to be in the refrigerator. So the refrigerated section. Things like sliced tomatoes. You can buy whole tomatoes and they're not in the refrigerated section, but if they're sliced, they have to be refrigerated. Okay, and these are things like sprouts down here in the bottom, bean sprouts. Those things can get us in trouble. The common denominators for this thing are they have a history of being involved in foodborne illness outbreak. They have a potential for causing problems either due to their processing or due to their makeup. Okay, usually they're wet or moist kind of foods. They contain protein, and they have a neutral or very slightly acidic pH. Okay, so those are some telltale signs of food that could really get us into trouble. Okay, so anybody got food allergies? Is anybody allergic to anything?
I'm allergic. I'm allergic to mushrooms.
Is that Mercedes?
Yeah.
Yeah, mushrooms. Okay, so there's a lot of things that people are allergic to. So it's common to have some kind of food allergy, and so and some people, I don't know, just get a little itchy maybe. some people break out in a rash, and some people go into what we call anaphylactic shock, which means that their throat starts to swell and they can't breathe, and could lead to death even. So some people are definitely allergic to things, and some people just, you know, get a little itchy. So there's every range in between. So as a food service employee, that's kind of important, because if somebody ask you, you know, does this have I don't know, shrimp in it? Well, if you answer, you need to know. I mean, no, it doesn't have shrimp or whatever, but people need to know that if they ask you, they're asking usually because they have a food allergy. So I was thinking about, let's see, for instance, when you drive through Dairy Queen, Talon, right there on the window, it says this place serves things with peanuts, or some version of that. But because there's a lot of people that have peanut allergies, and so, or different types of things like that people are allergic to. So if they ask you, it's important that you're truthful with them, or if you don't know, you go find out, because we don't make anybody sick. So we're getting pretty close on time here. So this particular slideshow is going to be on Moodle. And so if you want to finish looking at this, and I'll go ahead and post this. So if you want to go back and look at it, but there should be a lesson right under this. And so you guys will start on this particular section here. There should be a vocab and then some questions. So anyway, anybody got any questions or anything you'd like to talk about real quick?
How's your guys' day?
So far, so good.
Nice.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, not bad for a Wednesday. So who in this group is going to be here tomorrow? So my Thursday, Friday people. Okay. So, and then on my Monday, Tuesday people, you guys will have be with Mrs. Bronte on Friday, right? So don't forget about that. So everything going okay? All right. Well, I'm going to have some stuff for us to cook. I think we'll probably make apple crisp when you're here next time for this group. So we'll be trying to make a few things and letting you guys kind of test out the sanitizing process, letting you make it like our dishwashing or 3-compartment sink, for instance, and using thermometers, getting good at using food safety type equipment. Okay. So, well, all right. Well, we better get off of here since I kept you guys for an hour. That was a long class, wasn't it? So anyway, I'm going to stay on here till the bitter end. So, but if you guys don't have anything you want to ask me, then you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you on your school day, whatever day that is. All right. But I'm going to stay on here until everybody else gets off. So if you have anything you want to ask me, we can do that. Okay. All right. But we'll see you guys pretty soon. Okay. Have a great Wednesday. Bye, everybody.